Hello everyone, today I want to show you how to use ediff to compare files in Windows. Ediff is a visual interface for a diff executable that allows you to compare files. It can compare up to 3 files and merge them similar to kdiff3. It also allows you to compare files from different Git branches. All of that works out of the box on Linux because ediff uses Linux's native diff function. But under Windows we need a diff executable first. There are a number of different diff executables you can use, and in this video I'm going to show you how to set up ediff if you have Git already installed in your machine, since Git comes with a known diff executable. And I'm going to show you a few things you can do with ediff. So let's get right to it. So as I've mentioned before, we are going to use the diff executable that Git ships with. I'm just going to show you the folder real quick in the command line. As you can see, I'm in the git user bin folder, and that's where the diff executable is located. And I'm just going to enter dir real quick and show you. So let's scroll up. And there it is. There is the diff.exe and the diff3.exe. And ediff is basically going to call those two executables in the background to make its diff. Ediff has to know where to look for these executables, and we can achieve this by adding this folder, this one, to our path system environment variable. This is a very simple process. You can go to, you can open up the Explorer, right click on the computer icon, then select properties. A window should come up where on the left side you can select advanced system settings, which should open another window. There we navigate to the tab Advanced, and at the bottom of this tab there is a button called Environment Variables, which opens another window. And in this window at the bottom there are the system variables, and there should be an entry called path, and then we add our full path to the Git installation, depending on where you install Git, of course, to the path environment variable, and after that you restart the PC, and now ediff should be all set. So first thing, I'm going to show you the most common Emacs ediff commands. That looks kind of ugly, so I'm going to show you something else first. You can mark a region, then we hit Alt X, and then we can just do align -regexp. Then we have to enter a regular expression with which to align our region. We enter the arrow, and there we go. That looks a lot nicer. So first of all, of course, the most common one, ediff, is just you compare two files. You're going to get a prompt what files to compare. I'm just going to show you. We hit Alt X or Meta X. We enter ediff, and we're going to get a query down here, file A to compare, and if we hit enter, we are going to get the query to enter a second file to compare. ediff3, basically the same, but we are going to compare 3 files, so we get the question which files to compare 3 times. ediff buffer is basically you can compare files or buffers that are open, so only buffers you have opened in this session. ediff revision allows you to compare files from 2 different Git branches, which is very handy when you're using Git a lot. vcedith is basically when you're using the built-in version control, and you can, for example, when you're in vcedith, you can look at the changes from the file. I'm just going to show you later on what that actually means. ediff current file is the unsaved changes. For example, if you don't have auto revert buffer on, you can safely see if you would do a revert buffer, what would change in the file, what changes would be lost, and so on. I'm just going to show you that later on as well. And also very important, ediff documentation, because of course I'm not going to show you every single little detail about ediff, and wouldn't probably be able to. So if you just hit Alt X again, we enter ediff minus documentation. We get this documentation down here, and there is an introduction. You can just click through it, and there are a lot of further information about ediff. So first of all, we want to take a look at ediff current file. As we can see, we have unsaved changes in this file, which was of course the alignment of the regular expression. So let's hit Alt-X, ediff minus current file, then we hit enter. We are going to get a question if we want to have a look at the autosave file, but we don't. We want to have a look at the file that is saved on the hard drive. So then we get this, these two buffers. I personally don't really like the setup with the horizontal split. I prefer a vertical split. There is a hotkey, of course, it's Alt-Gr and the vertical, like the vertical line. I can show you, we get this little window up here in the corner. If we hit question mark, we get a bigger window, which is very nice because it has all the hotkeys that we can use. And there is the hotkey for the vertical and the horizontal split. We can also hit question mark again, and if we hit question mark again, the window will go back to its prior form. So we can go there again. In order to navigate the different diffs, we can use N and P, and it will automatically jump to the next diff or to the previous diff, of course. So let's make it small again. As you can see, we start at the top of the file. There's, of course, I didn't change anything there, so we hit N, and we're going to go down to our first diff, which is, of course, the diff of this region. We can also, now that we have the diff of this region, we can modify the region. As you can see down here, this is file A, which is the file on our hard drive. And this is the change file, file B. So if we now hit A, we are going to move the changes from the A file to the B file. As you can see now, the changes from the A file are now in the B file. We can also restore any changes that we did by hitting R and B, which is restore and file B. And we can of course also hit B, which would move all the changes from the B file to the A file for this particular diff. So it's not the whole file, it's always the diff that you have selected. So, and that's basically all I wanted to talk about when talking about ediff current file. We can leave a diff session by hitting Q, and we get the query down here, quit this ediff session, and we can confirm by hitting Y, and there we go, we exited the ediff session. Now we can close the file, we can save it, because of course it looks a lot nicer like this. And I'm going to show you ediff and ediff3 and some other ediffs. So I've prepared a few files in advance, of course. These are also in a Git repository, but we'll see it later on. First, we're going to take a look at the standard ediff. If we hit meta-x, we get the, and enter ediff, of course, we get the query file A. So we can just hit double tap and we get all the files in the folder. And we're going to take this file, and I have prepared a little diff file, which is the second file. We start in the horizontal again and at the top of the file. So if I now hit N, we jump to our first diff, which is an insertion. There's like int A, there's no int A, and here we have another insertion, and we can just jump between the diffs. And as I've mentioned before, by pressing A, for example, we can move the diff from the A file to the B file, and we can do that for every single diff. And if we want to restore, So we hit A, we have int v is equal to 1 now in our B file. If we hit restore B, it will only restore the last one you changed. So if I hit RB again, it's just this diff, so it's tied to this diff. The restoration is always tied to diff. So if I jump back here again and I hit RB, now it changed the int A back. So restoration is always tied to the diff that you have selected, and you can move around diffs any way you want. So for example, I don't have the line int A in my B file. If I just hit B, as I just did, I can delete the line in the file A. Of course, it's pretty simple. It's the same as in every diff program. So now that we have seen a very simple ediff2, let's take a quick look at ediff3. Ediff3 is basically the same as let's make a little change. Ediff3 is basically the same as ediff, like the standard ediff. The only difference is we get to enter 3 files. Let's do it like this, and let's also go with the save file. So we hit ediff3, same way, meta x ediff3. Then we get this view again. I prefer the vertical view, of course. And as you can see, we have a number of changes that we can again jump through by using N and P. And it's basically the same as before. I changed this value in the other file, and as you can see, the value that is changed is highlighted separately. It's pretty standard stuff, of course, as you can see. So let's have a look at comparing files from different Git branches. We're going to quit our session before. So as I said before, this demo file is in a Git branch, and we can compare files from different Git branches, and we can do this by entering ediff minus revision. So it's meta x again, ediff minus revision. We hit enter. We get asked which file we want to compare. Default is the file that we have open, so we hit enter. Now it's the default file. Revision 1, we can hit enter, then we would use branch 1, like the branch we are currently in. But we can also specify another branch that we are not even in or on. We're just going to use the default one, and we use the master branch as comparison. And we have now, as you can see, the hash for the demo file, and this is the demo file in the master branch. And we can jump again through the file using N and P and have a look at the diff. Last but not least, I want to show you vcedith. So we close all the files that we had before. We are on Git branch 1. We are in the demo C. So if we would do a few changes, for example, we add another line. It doesn't have to be anything super fancy. So we have another line added, we have the file edited. So if we enter vcedith, which is Control X, V and D, then we get asked the version control status for which directory. It's the directory we are already in that we want, so we hit enter. And we get this little view, which is basically the same view that you get when you enter git status in the command line. And as you can see, we have one file edited. If I move to the line and if I were to hit the D, or capital D to be more precise, we get the standard diff minus git view, which is just the few lines before the diff and after the diff. But this can be kind of, it's not optimal. Sometimes you want to see the whole file. So what we can do if we let's close this real quick. So what we can do if we are in the vc directory buffer, like vcdir buffer, as you can see, we can hit meta x and we can enter vc minus ediff. So now we get this view and we get the whole file. We can again jump around by using nnp, and in some cases it's a lot better than just the standard diff view that you get with gitk or the standard git. So let's quit this session, and that's basically all I wanted to show you for ediff. I hope you enjoyed it and have a good day.